Hey, everybody, YouTube family. Shades of Nerdy here. Just getting the channel up and going after a much long bout of procrastination. Wondering if it was going to be the right move for me or not. Honestly, I've decided that it is, simply because hopefully it's going to allow me to continue sharing my hobby and the things that I love with like-minded people who also enjoy that. The whole reason for this video is a fellow Redditor, CXAfigs. He and I were discussing dioramas on a post, and he mentioned that he liked some of the stonework he saw. I've been working on a breakthrough wall diorama. Excuse the jolt. I'll try to show you here. This one right here, and he made a comment on my stonework and said that he really liked how it looked, and asked me how it was that I got that look and if I had some kind of a tutorial that he could check out. Unfortunately I didn't, because as I said, this is my first video and I have not done this up until right now. But our conversation kind of motivated me to do this so that I could show him and anybody else who might be interested in how, I do this particular type of work myself. XPS is what I typically use. They come in 2 foot by 2 foot, 1 inch thick sheets at Home Depot, usually about $10. They get me through 2 or 3 projects typically, depending on the size that I'm working with. But we're going to take this and I'm going to show you guys how we can get it to look like this. Much different than what you're seeing here. Now, there's a non-textured and textured side, just so I can give you guys some reference as we go along. We basically go from this to this, and then once we start our carving and taking out pieces that we're going to take out, we end up with something like this. So I'll show you from start to finish how we do that. This is about a 3 inch by 3 inch cube, 1 inch thick. So I'm just gonna go ahead and add my score lines in where my stones are gonna be. And honestly, people, can tend sometimes to overanalyze and worry about this part. But I'm not so concerned with my lines being perfectly straight all the time, especially on stonework. Brick is a little bit different because you do kind of want those to look uniform throughout. But when you're working with stone, you're going for kind of an erratic look where everything's, different. The lines aren't as symmetrical and linear as they are in other places. So it's not as important to me that they be that way, because they're going to be rounded off in most of the edges. All those hard edges are going to disappear, and then you're going to get a completely different look. Now I'm just adding in my score lines where, like I said, different stones are going to be at. And then once we get these in, we'll go through and kind of widen them up a little bit so that they're easier to see. And I'm going to go ahead and go around my sides with my lines, as you see. And the reason I'm doing that is just so you guys have a point of reference. Typically, you're doing a diorama, you're probably not gonna do both sides of the wall. You're most likely going to be working on just one side that's going to be prominently shown when you're doing photography and videos. So that one wall is typically all that's important. Now, when you're doing a piece of stone like this, and like the diorama that I showed you I'm working on, I have a fall through piece. That's the part of the wall that's broken through. And so you have to make sure that all sides are kind of done. That way it's uniform, and no matter what angle you're catching it at or what side, because one side shows when it's up in place in the wall, and then the other side shows when it's laying down on the ground as though they've broken through it. So this whole piece has to be detailed just to make sure that whatever angle you catch it at, you know, you're going to see detail work and not just flat foam like this. Because we're going from basically having this look 2D, and we're going to take it to a third dimension, so it's a lot more favorable for pictures and realism. Next thing, just a standard number 2 pencil is what I typically use, and this is just to go through and make your lines more visible. You're just going to go through and press in with your pencil and help those to really pop out. Now, in a brick situation, where you're doing, say, an apartment building or something urban, and you're doing just standard bricks, this is a really good technique for helping you get those grout or mortar lines in there between the bricks. And once again, don't worry about these little holes and these little edges like this. Once we start carving, that'll all come into play and actually help out. So still widening up these lines, but when you're doing, like I said, a brick diorama, these lines are really easily filled by a lightweight spackle, so you can mimic that real good look of the mortar in between the bricks. I'll show you again real close or real quick. This right here is an example of some of that with the brickwork. Those lines I filled in with a lightweight spackle. Dried within just a handful of hours. So it definitely brings it to another level. It makes it look a lot more real than it would without it. So at this point, once we've got all of our lines kind of bold-faced now, I guess you could say, we're going to go in and just start carving out these edges. And you're only going to go in at a 45 to maybe a 90-degree angle, depending on the depth you want to go to, and just kind of shave off this, you know, go in and out, kind of change the shape right around the corner to the top side, and just shave off a little piece like that. And as you can see, it leaves you with a lot more of a textured look, you know, a lot more 3D looking here and feeling than the flat surface. So that's what's really going to come into play in helping the whole piece come across that way. So all you do is just go around, and you're going to do the same thing on pretty much all these corners. So, you know, this is something I like to do by hand, just because I enjoy it. The carving process is really fun to me, watching the shapes come alive. But you can do this however you want to. If there's a faster method you can come up with, by all means, go for it. If you're dealing with a diorama that's got 3 or even 4 walls, then I would definitely recommend whatever you could do to speed it up, because this would take a long time on a project like this. Now, the wall that I showed you guys is just one wall that I basically had to do this on, so it was definitely worth the time invested to do it. On something larger, I might be more inclined to do a stone wall only on one specific section, just to keep myself from having to do so much carving work. But as you can see, once you get started doing it, and you take these corners off of each block, you know, you start to see all that come into life, and it looks way different than just a flat brick or block, you know. So, and as we're going along, you'll notice that there's some pieces that get kind of nicked or shredded by the blade, and you know, you might think to yourself, well, that doesn't look very good. All that, you know, scraggly bit of foam just kind of hanging behind. Well, luckily, once we get the paint laid down on it, you're not really going to notice that anymore. Plus, we're also going to give the stones texture with some foil. And once we do that, you'll really notice that a lot of those kind of just disappear into the background. You don't even notice them. And the rest, that are in the holes and some of the stuff that we carved, like in here. This will get covered by the paint. And then once the paint is done and you start to highlight all the, excuse me, concrete, and then do the dark washes with maybe black and brown and green, since it's kind of dungeon-esque stone, that'll basically fill in all of this stuff so you won't really see these imperfections. And honestly, in some lights, if if your lighting is right and you're hitting it from just the right angle, it looks even better. But basically, this is what you're going for. And you're taking all the corners away, more or less. And like I said, if this is a wall that's standing up, and this is the front, you're going to want your sides carved in, just a little here and there, just so you continue the stone look and get rid of the flat look. Doesn't have to be perfect yet again. Just work it however your blade carries you. But as you can see, just taking out chunks and lines here and there, end up giving you shapes that, stones would mimic in the wild. So that's kind of where we're resting at with that. The final step before we start priming and painting the pieces, of course, is to go in with aluminum foil, just a ball. And all you're going to do is kind of roll it across the surface. I know many other people have videos on this, so you've probably seen this elsewhere. But you're just going to drag it across, roll it across the surface. And I even do, because, if you're doing the edges like this, you're also going to want to kind of run it over those edges and round those corners off a little bit. It gives it more of that worn stone type structure. So that's technically the last step before painting, but as you can see, once you get that added to all that, quite a good texture that comes out on that. And then once you get your primer down and lay, say, a nice dark gray, dry brush with some white to highlight all these cracks and crevices and the imperfections in the stone, and then do some dark washes over it, you should be good to go. So I appreciate you guys tuning in. Hopefully I'll get some traction on this and decide to do some more. Maybe I'll go ahead and do some painting videos and show you guys my painting process on my breakthrough wall, and take it from there. I appreciate you guys showing up to watch. We'll see you later.